All the animals want to fight tonight.
They're all
Look, they
going
want the
after
show to
it.
be good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they got to
right.
add a little bit of
Right,
a zoo.
A little
yeah.
digestion on from the background.
Right
I think
behind
it's perfect
right
though.
behind my camera, my cat got into a scrap with my dog. So
Man.
Oh well, if things go poorly, we could just film that.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
honestly, that might redeem whatever content
that
we
on
get
deck.
into tonight. But no, gentlemen, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys joining me for the first ever Youngdad Roundtable. I'm super excited that we're doing this. And I just, of course, just really thank you guys all for your time, for being here tonight. And to the guests, for anyone watching, whatever point they tune in, if there's already people watching, welcome, welcome. Make sure you guys settle in, get comfy, because this is going to be a great one. Tonight, we're flipping the script a little bit than what we usually do on Young Dad Podcast. I can say I've interviewed each of you one-on-one, but I decided what's better than bringing us all together for some good times. So gathering of dads, men, brothers, we're all at the table. Figuratively, we're all in different locations geographically, but we're all still at the same fatherhood table. We're here to talk, debate, laugh, share, keep it real about fatherhood, manhood, and everything in between, whatever we get into. Everyone's got a seat at this table. Every single listener, every single viewer, you guys each have a seat at the table, no matter what. So excited that you're here. And we've all got something to bring. So let's get into it, of course. So first and foremost, let's go around and introduce ourselves, a little bit about what we do, platforms, things like that. Of course, I'm Jay. I'm your host, host of the Young Dad podcast, and of course, host of the Young Dad Roundtable. So other than that, let's start with Eric, your top left of the screen. So go ahead and we'll go Eric, Mike, Paul, then Casey.
What's up, everybody? My name is Eric Rodriguez, but I go by Eric the host. I am the host of the Dope Individuals Only podcast, where we have conversations about how somebody gets to where they are in their lives. So it's about just using our own personal experience to enrich the lives of others. Um, I've been on Jay's podcast before, and I'm happy to be here, man, to be talking with everybody, and let's have a good conversation.
Love it. Mike?
Well, thanks for putting this together. Since you thanked all of us, I thought this was awesome as soon as you pitched it. So I appreciate you, bringing everyone together and all that goes into that. So thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, my name is Mike Coyne. I am a counselor specialized in addiction and relationships, family addiction, disorders of compulsion in general. Been doing that for the last 7 years. Prior to that, I was a football coach for 15 years. So made that major pivot. Like I said, about 7 years ago. In St. Augustine, Florida is where my practice is. It's called Curevine. So I'm going to remember to do this on a podcast for one time. Actually mention it. That it's at Curevine, just like it sounds, on Instagram is basically the only one I use, because I have to have something out there. But yeah, that's my private practice. I have my wife, Carrie. We have a 4-month-old daughter. I have a son who's 6 years old, Will, from my previous marriage. And yeah, that's me.
Love it. Love it. Paul?
Well, I'm Paul Granger, and I am in full-time volunteer ministry, so I haven't gotten a traditional paycheck in 7 years. God is good. God's provided. I've been doing ministry for 20 years, and that's taken many different forms. But over the last 7 years, there's been a lot of content creation. So I've been doing the Where Did You See God podcast for pretty much that whole time. Been writing, self-publishing a whole lot of stuff on Amazon right now. I'm in the midst of a year of books. Every month I've self-published something. I'm crazy. I'm crazy. And part of the reason I'm crazy is because I got 3 young kids, 12, 10, and 6. But I love them. They're very creative, cute, and sweet. Amazing wife. A very loud cat that might meow at some point. And yeah, just trying to live each day, figuring out what it means to be an ambassador of Christ, whether it's in a formal way or sitting on the porch with a friend and everything in between.
Love it. Casey, hit us.
Great. My name is Casey. I am a father of 4, and I have a, let's see, 9-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, a just turned 4-year-old daughter and a 6-month-old. I've been a person in long-term recovery for 19 and a half years. I've been a counselor for 13, and I've been an international missionary, and I'm currently in my master's degree at Liberty University for psychology, hopefully moving on to PsyD for social psychological research, essentially. But that's really because I was going to leave my industry out of distaste for what was going on there, especially since 2020. And I think that God compelled me to double down rather than dip out. And quite frankly, some of it came about because I couldn't find a job picking up trash. Actually, sometimes I still do look for those. But I'm trying to feed my family until then. I'm also the founder of the Rumble Right Dad YouTube channel and Rumble, TikTok, and Instagram. I usually go more personal on the gram because I actually have family who listen to me there, so I try not to be as rude as I am on YouTube. But really, I'm trying to defend the integrity of fathers in America today because they've been under assault for a long time, and that's part of the reason why men are choosing not to have children. And along with a lot of other reasons, it's time to redeem that because I've got 3 daughters and a son who are going to need to grow up in a better tomorrow for America. And it's White Pill Wednesday, so I'm just going to say, call my shot. It is going to be a better tomorrow for America, but it's going to take men like us to stand for our kids and defend that opportunity for them.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you so much for being here. I'm Jay. I'm your host. And like I said, we're all dads, we're all men, we're all brothers. We're all just here because we love our kids, we love our family, and we love helping others. And we love giving back to everyone in between. So we're gonna jump right into it with our first segment of the show is gonna be called Dad News of the Week. I sent this out to you guys, kind of what to expect for this, but we're gonna be talking. Well, actually, there's gonna be a double dose of dad news. One you guys know about, one you guys may have heard about today. So we'll start with the Roblox one. So what is Roblox? As you guys probably know, or listeners probably know, um, Roblox is a very popular kids game that kids love to play, and it's been under a lot of scrutiny in the last month or so. So who is? Let me go over a timeline for you guys. Schlep. And what happened? Schlep, real name Michael. He's a 22-year-old YouTuber known for staging sting operations against alleged sexual predators on Roblox. His work reportedly led to 6 arrests. On August 29th, 2025, Roblox Corporation banned Schlep. Okay, this was the first thing that happened here, first domino to fall, citing violations of a new vigilante group's policy. So they created this policy called vigilante groups, and then they sent him a cease and desist letter accusing him of unauthorized interference, privacy violations, and risking user safety. Long story short, he then posted a video on this on his YouTube saying it was hilarious. He vowed to continue his efforts off platform and indicated plans to countersue. So there's been a lot of public rise up around this, around Roblox, that fans are talking to, hashtag free Schlep, because he didn't really do anything wrong, right? He was actually helping keep our kids safe. He was actually doing really good work, in my personal opinion. You guys may differ on that opinion there. And so U.S. Representative Ro Khanna publicly supported Schlep, staging a Change.org petition, reached over 100,000 signatures calling for stronger child safety policies on Roblox. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Muriel filed a lawsuit accusing Roblox of prioritizing profits over child safety, which I mean is pretty obvious here, failing to curb the predatory behavior. As a result, Roblox has now faced multiple civil suits, including lawsuits originating from Michigan, Missouri, North Carolina, and Texas, which have collectively spotlighted long-standing grooming failures on the platform. The stock price dipped, so words talk, but numbers scream, as always. So their stock dipped 7 to 10% amongst all this, and then even Chris Hansen, Catcher Predator guy, is producing a documentary now on Roblox child safety and has interviewed Schlep, law enforcement, and whatnot. with all this, I think it really comes down to a couple things here, and I'll go around. I'll get your guys' opinion. It comes down to Roblox seems, and I guess hold on a little bit more here with the story is that there's also many TikTok influencers, many moms, dads, things like that, speaking out against Roblox. Also, we're receiving cease and desist letters from the platform telling you guys, hey, we have this policy, this vigilante policy, you got to stop. And it's just terrible. And so overall, this is a issue of big child safety gap that I think we see all across the board in every single social media platform, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, any social media platform, you name it. I think there's a big gap here. Improper monetization practices, because there's a lot of microtransactions that happen on Roblox, and then there's also really weird things that happen on there. Some things that kids shouldn't see, grooming that happens on there as well, and then of course the platform's response. I think is what was the most surprising. Is if you have a kids game, it should be for kids, about kids, made for them, and stay for them. It shouldn't really be about the predator. You should protect the kids over the predator, but I think we see that a lot when there's a lot of money involved. And so yeah, that's kind of the story. That's kind of where it's at right now. Love to go around and get your guys' thoughts. Whoever wants to shoot first here on their thoughts on this.
Does anybody have kids that play Roblox?
I
There
don't
was a
personally.
brief season that my kid did, and we were very restrictive around who he could even have as friends, just like his cousin, friend from school,
Yeah.
because of this kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't want you talking to anybody that I don't
You
know,
don't know who they are. Yeah.
because it could be anybody in the world.
Right. So my son does play. My son, my eldest. I know I didn't say it in the introduction, but I have 3 children of my own. He'll be 11 next Saturday, which is my oldest son. I have a 8-year-old daughter, and then I also have a 5-year-old son. So there, I got a pretty good mix. But my eldest son plays Roblox, and I know that like he probably like encounters people who curse every once in a while, but I don't think he's never come to me and reported anything like what we're hearing here. Um, I do find it interesting that they continue to side with predators. And I know that like when I go through like my algorithms, I see it often where people are talking about like we need to protect children, but I don't really see anybody with power to that can do something about it really doing anything about it, because you hear it all the time. I'm sorry about the birds. They're
It's
going
That bird's
nuts,
got a
okay,
man.
lot to say about
it's
They're,
Roblox.
all good.
they're,
That bird is
yeah.
opinionated about this. That bird's fired up about this.
Oh, he never makes this much noise. I swear.
Blame the bird. Blame the
Um,
bird.
yeah, but I really don't understand why we continue to see people openly protect perverts. I call a spade a spade. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I hear you, Mike. I think you were ready to shoot.
Oh yeah, definitely, because I have such a strong take. But for the sake of the audience, let's pretend I don't know anything about this, which I don't. Um, how pervasive is that? Or I guess the question I want to lead with is why this game Roblox? Is it uniquely Roblox, or is this going on among other like large platform gaming? Again, I'm not familiar with a lot of these areas.
No, that's a good question. I think Roblox is kind of just the spotlight and the story of the week. But I'm pretty sure Fortnite's had an experience, had some allegations with this as well. And guys, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know that even NBA, like 2K, Madden, those games, like their online communities. Also, I mean, there's a whole message over the last few years that when you log on for the first time, there's a whole nice long EA Sports protective policy and all that. So I don't think it's not happening everywhere. I think it happens in all these games and all these platforms. Just Roblox is the one being exposed for it right now.
Gotcha. That's interesting. What I find interesting, and like I said, I'm learning of this from you guys right now. So what's interesting is in my experience, and obviously data would show that in most cases of child sexual abuse, sexual assault, it's going to be committed by someone known, unknown. So I find it interesting that these platforms are being used for that, and I'm just curious, like how pervasive is it that it's become an issue that is impacting their stock price? Because as you said, that means it's significant in some way, whether perception or reality and numbers. It's significant.
Yeah, I think it probably does affect their numbers based on what the statistics and data are. I think going back to what Eric was saying though, and by the way, my name is Chris. But I just got in kind of late. I had to get a haircut, and then I was like, "Oh, the time zone
Gotta
don't
look fresh for the
work."
You
I
looking
need
podcast,
to get
fresh?
man.
on.
Looking
Hey, I
good.
need
You
to get
looking
on my
good, man. You
phone.
looking good.
Hey, welcome.
But yeah, so
You
my
gotta show us
son
all up.
plays
You gotta show us
Roblox.
all up.
Yeah, it's all good. So I got an 11-year-old son, and then my other son is 6. But they play it, and I asked them before, like, who y'all playing with, and from what I seen, they just play with their friends. Now I don't know a whole lot about Roblox, but when I actually hear them sometimes, and they talking to their cousins, it's like their cousins and friends. There's only been one instance when, like, my older son said he's got his phone taken away. He got Snapchat taken away, and I said, well, what happened? He said, "Oh, I was talking to somebody online. I didn't know him, but I said, well, was it a kid?" He said, "Well, yeah, that's what I think." My mom was like, "Nah, don't be talking to people." I said, "Oh, well, that's good. She took it away then." So, I don't know if it was. It sounded like a kid. I don't know, but yeah, I would just be safe, be like mindful and stuff like that. But I've never personally had an issue with Roblox. So.
Sometimes I feel like these stories also like are blown out of proportion for the sake of like trying to protect other things actually that are I don't want to say more important, but are definitely like should be at the top of priority lists as far as like country things and things like that. Like we've been seeing like the military pop up in cities now and things like that, and maybe they're doing something behind the scenes. And this is Jay suggested, like, this could be something like that is just the cover of the week, because I actually have a son who plays it on the regular, and like just like Chris said, he's mainly playing it with his friends. I do allow him to play like Fortnite, like on the open web where he can talk to people, but I still have like he knows to mute people if he hears something inappropriate and things like that. And most of the time he hears silence, or he's with his friends in a party. I think it really comes down to us in letting them know that there are dangers out there, but then also taking the tools that these platforms give us as parents, and privacy rights for our children, and actually use them. We do it with their cell phones. I do it with his Xbox. You know, there's certain games he's not allowed to play without me being in the games, certain things like that. I think it's like we got to be in our kids' business. That's my personal thing. Like, I'm in my kids' business. I think we should all be in our kids' business, And if you don't know what is going on with your children, then I always say like you need to be paying more attention, because there are a lot of dangers out there, and sometimes it be their friends.
Yeah. Well, you made a
Sometimes,
good
Yeah.
point about news stories, right? And because I think we see the gamut of it. There are real serious, like we got to pay attention to this news stories. There are ones like you noted, distraction ones, like something is elevated to get your mind on that instead of on that. And then we have already talked about money. I mean, we are in the time now of the 24-hour news cycle where you have to be producing something that will get the clicks. And so you will escalate something just to get, I mean, we all been hearing about Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel is huge right now, right? But like,
yeah,
we're not
about
going to
the
be talking about
logo,
Cracker
like,
Barrel next week. And so I think there's that piece of it. How can
We
we
might
be
though. We might though,
discerning?
because they might change
We
their logo back.
That's
They
yeah,
true.
do.
right.
They might. They
They
might
said they
make it look
did
like
already.
Roblox.
Yeah, they
But
just announced today they're changing it
Did they
back.
yeah,
really?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
they go back to the original.
but as parents, that's part of our role is like, how do we be discerning and not just reactive? How do we be wise and not just, suddenly go into a rage or hide or whatever it is? But all that being said, whether it's Roblox or something else, one of the hard realities is there has always been threats to children as long as there's been children. I mean,
Yeah,
as we've been talking, I'm thinking about when I was little, I watched the movie, I think it was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something, where they're like the child snatchers, right? And then I was watching a show called I think it's called The Parent Test, where they get parents of different parenting styles together. And one of the tests they do is the parents are watching from like a van. Their kid is in the playground and someone walks up with a dog and it's like, hey, you want to pet my dog? I've got more dogs around the corner. And all the parents are like, please don't go with the guy. Please don't go with the guy. Right? Like there's always been threats to children. And so I agree with what Eric was saying. The other thing that we as fathers need to do is be very aware of how not just we're watching out for our children, because the hard reality is we can't block everything because we don't even know what's out there. But what we can do, like Eric noted, is how do we equip our children? How do we make them discerning and mindful? How do we make them not just reactive, but wise in how they're navigating things? And to do so knowing that they're still kids learning it. So their brains are only quarter halfway developed. And so they're going to get it wrong. But what skills are we putting into them so that they can recognize, oh, all my friends are doing this, but I have the skill set to know that I don't necessarily need to do what they're doing to have value.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well
Casey,
said.
do you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Jonathan Haidt. He's got a couple books that are good about some of the collateral damage that has come out of digital natives, including like kids foregoing risk taking in real life and sort of casting that onto the internet instead of in person, which in my era, I might be close to Paul, I'm not sure, but in my era, we used to just fight in person in the neighborhood, and and that was better, I think, in some ways than being predated on by people, online. I think there's a we have built sort of a cohort of other parents who choose not to give their kids phones so that the amount of like fear of missing out, granted all of ours are still very young, but the fear of missing out and all those things is sort of like obfuscated from them because their peers and generally their social group doesn't have them. And we send our kids to a private school. It makes it sound uppity. I don't have money like that, don't worry. But it is possible for me to help them maintain their innocence for as long as I possibly can. And if you want your child's, childhood to be over, giving them an unlocked phone is an inevitable way for that to happen eventually because they will access spicy things and whether it's some probably 1 in a million chance on Roblox or one of the other platforms that they can get on, that's probably much less risky than what they could very intentionally do themselves. So having I agree we should be in their business, and I also think if I'm able to draw them into a period of maturity in their life at which point they can understand some of these complex things without having that exposure first, I'm doing a better job as a dad. It is my job to help them engage with the world successfully, and if and when the fight is necessary, that they would be prepared for that. And unfortunately, that's cast to the internet now. And I say unfortunately because you don't have the same social cues and other ways of resolving conflict as you would in person. And you don't have the social consequences of seeing when you hurt someone's feelings or seeing when they, are about to punch you in the nose. All of those things, it is helpful to have, we've just evolved to respond to these cues in person. And now that we're doing it online, kids, I mean, this isn't necessarily causal, but it is corollary. Kids' mental health is twice as bad as it has ever been measured to be. And part of that is we have cast all of our children online. We told them to be careful and be safe. My mom still does this with my kids. She'll buy us safety equipment that I'm like, Mom, that's not coming anywhere near my house. I don't need that crap. If they're going to fall down the stairs, frankly, it'll happen. It happens, but I don't want them to. Don't get me wrong. But,
Yeah, no, Casey
you know,
doesn't endorse you throwing your kids down the
no, I
stairs, guys.
don't.
No,
I
no,
don't.
no,
It never
no.
happens
Come
on
on,
If
purpose.
they're gonna fall, if they're gonna fall down the steps, you let them fall down the steps. Because I'm pretty sure I told you to stay away from
That's
the
right,
steps by then.
exactly.
Yeah,
So,
and
it'll happen once and then it won't happen again.
Exactly.
And now we've cast all that risk taking online. We taken snowballs away from kids in class, in school. We've taken all competition away, and now it's all online. And boys need competition. They need to be able to thrive against one another. There is a hierarchy, and
I
they
was,
derive some of their identity from that hierarchy. And we've
yep.
taken it all away and put it on Roblox. So you shouldn't be surprised when somebody who wants to predate against your children finds the outlet that we just put them all on, you know? And I'm not casting dispersions on any of the men here who make that choice. You guys are all responsible. I'm sure you do a great job. It is just important for me to preserve their innocence. And if they have fear of missing out because of it, that is a less consequence than if something were to happen to them on one of these platforms. Side point, I don't know the value necessarily. Video games to me is neutral at best. And so while I play them every once in a while, I would not. I struggle because my son will, he does kind of get a kick here and there where he wants to play. And, we've let him play some of the games that were around when I was a kid. But I see it. I'm an addictive personality, obviously. I've been a drunk, for a quarter of my life now. Not currently, but before. So, I see like he's immediately just like me. Anything that's good, why not four times more of that thing? If it feels good in my brain, he wants more of it. So I'm not certain the approach to take with video games, but I'm certain the approach to take with the internet, which is if they miss out on stuff, I'm actually very exceedingly happy that they did because I don't really want them to be immersed in these circles that, they hear cussing or, there's other, spicy stuff that goes around. If they miss out on that, good. Probably nothing that was memorable. Novelty is what's memorable, right? Nothing memorable was going to happen that night on Roblox anyway. You might talk about it for a day, but next week you won a football game in your backyard with your friends. That might be noteworthy. You might remember that until you're an adult. But Roblox certainly isn't making that landfall in my mind. So I'm trying my best to navigate this with the video games and my son especially. And I'm just not certain. That's good. It's good to hear from older fathers or fathers that have that engagement to see what might be successful there. I'm not convinced either way yet.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
hard part, right? Is like there is no like guidebook that says definitively here's how it works because every parent's different, every kid is different, every context is different, and the world is becoming different every year. And it makes it so hard. And so again, that show, the parent test, that's what was intriguing to me. Initially, I thought I was going to hate it because I hate reality TV. I thought it was going to be like this cheesy thing, but they did it really well. It wasn't like really pitting parent types against each other. It was actually putting them in situations, but then processing it. And for me, that was the biggest takeaway from the show is there was no parenting type that they said, oh no, yours is the worst one and yours is the best one. But there were plenty of moments where like, wow, what your parenting type brings to the table actually was uniquely valuable here. Or man, what if you brought in this parenting type? And so it was inviting parents to understand themselves, their kids, and the context. And because this is the challenging thing, right? Like, even if we could crack the code, right? Do everything perfectly. One of the big tropes is the kids who, once they have freedom, suddenly like want to explore that freedom. That's a part of human nature, this rebelliousness, this desire to experience what was blocked from us. The classic story of the prodigal son, and you get the impression that the father did everything right and both of his sons messed up, one in an overt way but the other one just as much. And man, to be a father and know that even when you do your best, it is not going to guarantee the best happens. That is hard. And so that's the other piece for us, right? Is like, how do we do this with intentionality and hold it loosely, knowing our kids could get harmed even with our best efforts? Like that is, whew, it hurts. It hurts, but
Yeah.
there is no way to stop that. And so then how are we then uh, making sure that we remain in a healthy place rather than one that's just responding out of fear or control or any other driver that's not going to sustain us?
That's what I was going to comment on. As I acknowledged in the beginning, this is new information to me. When not that this kind of thing goes on, but this specific story that has apparently made a lot of headlines this week. My initial reaction, I was asking, how common is this? Like, how much is this going on? Because one of my concerns when I'm hearing this is that it being a big story is like, okay, well, there's a lot of reasons that something can be such a big story. Like as Paul was talking about, 24-hour news cycle. We are in a culture that is more divisive than ever, pretty much over almost any issue. Child predators is one over which people mainly agree, I think. Most people are anti. And one thing that does engage people is fear. And being a parent, there's a lot of inherent fear that comes along with that. So one of my concerns, again, why I was asking how common this is because I worry if something like this catching someone's attention and this being the topic of conversation kind of takes people's eyes off the ball, which is that the real threats, specifically in this way, in terms of child sexual abuse, are near your home. They're closer to your orbit. I mean, statistically, it's not even close. Like, it's much more likely. As Jay knows that's part of my childhood trauma. It's part of my history. So I'm very sensitive to this issue. And to go back again to something Paul said, you can't do everything perfect. I wonder if this is a situation where perfection can become the enemy of good, like trying to just do this perfectly, and which means maybe some hypervigilance and obsessing about a Roblox story. Again, caveat, I don't know what about this particularly, but does that take away from the core things like Eric was also talking about that are just fundamental parts of our parenting, and how we're preparing our kids to deal with the real dangers in the world and preserve their innocence as long as possible, like Casey said.
Absolutely. And I think it comes down to a couple things here, right? The 3 Ps and the 3 Rs. The 3 Ps, be proactive, be preventative, and then be prepared. Preparation. So proactiveness, prevention, and preparation, I think, helps us do all those things, right? Like we're talking about being proactive, being involved with your kids, playing with them on these platforms, knowing who they're talking to, setting those rules, those ground rules ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, knowing, hey, if you hear this, you shut it off. If you do this, you do this. You do this, you do this. Putting those parental controls in, putting all the safeguards in place that you can, because you can't protect them from everything. And, sometimes they do got to learn. You could put a baby gate at the top of the stairs. Your kid could still fall down the stairs. That's not going to matter, right? But you at least try to put the prevention in that place, right? Some lessons have to be learned the hard ways. But you can still be proactive. You can still take prevention, and you can still prepare them for these things, right? And it's better. The 3 Ps are much better than the 3 Rs I have here. Than reacting when something already happens, right? When they're already caught, when they're already talking to someone, when they're already Snapchatting somebody and gave them their address, right? Because you didn't prepare them. You didn't let them know, hey, if someone's asking for your address, trying to meet up with you, shut that down. That's a no. That's a no-go. You talk to me, we report it kind of thing and whatnot. Now you're reacting. And then you're repairing. Then you're repairing a relationship. You're repairing hurt. You're repairing possible trauma. Maybe you're repairing something else, right? And then ultimately what that comes to is repentance in a form as well, right? Where you're having to make amends with yourself, with your child, possibly with God for whatever happened, right? Because you weren't proactive, you weren't preventative, and you weren't prepared, all in all. So I think that's really what it comes down to. But all in all, we have to be in their business. We have to be a part of their worlds. We have to play with them. We have to engage with them. We have to know what they're doing. We have to make sure they're prepared. We have to be having these conversations, right? Because we might think, okay, yeah, my 8-year-old, I'm going to let them be on Roblox and, hang out. But, if we don't prepare them for what could be on there, even at an age appropriate level, they're susceptible to danger. It's the same idea of something happening close to home as well, right? If they don't know what signs to look for, if they don't know what to be aware of, then they can't, be prepared. You can't prevent it. You can't, be proactive, right? Then you're reacting. Oh my gosh, I let him go over to the neighbor's house because I thought the neighbor was fine, but lo and behold, last 3 months they've been going over there, something's been happening, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that we have to be prepared, and we have to do everything we can, put the safeguards in place, and we have to be proactive about it, right? At every age we can talk about it. At every single age we can talk about it. Every single age we can increase that conversation, go deeper into the conversation, add new layers to it. There's nothing that we can't talk about with our kids. We want them to talk about everything with us, but we also have to be willing to talk about everything with them, and at an age appropriate level. And if you don't know how to do that, that's okay. Call your dad, call your mom, call your brother, call your sister, call me. I don't care. Message us six or whatever, right? If you don't know what to do, message someone, talk to someone, whether at church, maybe it's another dad maybe it's a coach, maybe it was your childhood coach, someone right along the way possibly might have an answer for you, on how to do that. And if you don't know and you're out of things, go to a good men's group, dad's group, something. Find something. That's part of being proactive, is getting out there and finding it, making it happen. So those are my thoughts
Well,
on
and
this. Any other closing thoughts before we take this to the next?
what? Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off what you just said because I think it's worth naming. Broaching this topic, particularly things dealing with sexual things, let's just name it. That is hard. That is
Oh,
uncomfortable. I
absolutely.
think all
Yeah.
of us have had moments where we're like, ah, man, what age and how? And because the moment you bring that topic up, you have introduced that topic. But if you wait to introduce that topic, then someone else might introduce that topic. And so I think you're right. There are age appropriate ways. I'll give an example. I love our pediatrician. He's a good friend of ours. He's part of our church family, was an elder for a while. And part of a doctor's job is to check a kid's private areas to make sure that they look okay. One thing he does every single time is he asks their permission. And then he communicates with them. Now, look, I'm asking the permission, but nobody else except for me and your parents should be, right? Like, he does this with every kid that he works with. And I appreciate it so much because that's a rarity, because it is uncomfortable and awkward. But like, it brought it into our kids at their youngest age. And then I got to shout out my wife, who she created this thing with our oldest kids called Real Talk, where once a week we sit with them and we start off at age 7 or 8 with some age appropriate books that talk about the human body and talk about sexuality and talk all these things. And like you noted, Jay, we can build up. So there's another book that's kind of the next level. And now that our oldest is entering puberty, like, we're preparing ourselves to be able to, the Real Talk, to be also sharing some of our stories and opening up. And so I want people that are listening to know, like you said, Jay, it's okay if you feel uncomfortable, but I want them to know, like, all of us here, like, we have navigated that, like, not knowing exactly how to do it, still figuring out how to do it, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable about it, but know that discomfort doesn't have to be a disqualifier.
And I think it's so important as well. What you said, Paul, there. Make sure that you're talking about it with them before someone else does. Which also includes their school, which why it's important to be proactive. Go to your school district's website. If you don't know what school district your kid's in, you should figure that out first. But go to your
Red
school
flag.
district's red flag. Go to your school district website, look up the curriculum that's usually broken down by subject: science, math, ELA, reading, yada yada yada, even sex ed, and sexual health or whatever. It could be named different things depending on your state. Some states try to mix it in here and there. Some states are more transparent with it. So sometimes you have to dig for it. That's just how it is. In Washington State, I had to dig for it, a little bit, and click around a few times to finally find the slideshow that would be seen and whatnot, to make sure that I'm reading the curriculum right. And I want to make sure that, okay, if they're going into first grade, what are they probably going to be talking about in first grade? Okay, this is what they'll be talking about. This is the curriculum that's shown. This is when they do it, kind of thing. Great. Information's all there. Now I know, as a dad, what they're going to be talking about. I can get ahead of this conversation as well to let them know whether that's right or wrong according to our family values and whatnot. So I encourage every dad. It's a little dad hack here, a little dad tip. to make sure you're
Thanks
being
for that. I didn't
proactive
know that
and
was a thing.
Yep. Go to your school district's website. Go to the school's website itself. All the curriculum should be public knowledge and public information. And if it's not, then you should probably be calling the school board or superintendent and saying, where the heck is the curriculum for this? Because it should be out there. You know, out in Washington State they have it. Over here in this neighboring state they have it. This neighboring district has it even. So making sure, because I will tell you, a lot of states are starting as early as like first, second grade, even some as early as kindergarten. So it's so important to be getting after it, to be paying attention and be on the ball. And that's kind of my last thought here. Any other last thoughts on this topic before we move on?
Yeah, I do have something I want to say because what you saying is right. A lot of that stuff, some of the stuff I learned from church, but yeah, because I remember when I went to a church camp, I was like, I guess you call it chaperone. But what they do is they show the videos before, and they actually, yeah, most of the people that's like touching kids and molesting them is always like actually a family member. And then, so I'm gonna lead into that, and then there's another time I was just curious. So one time I was curious about my apartments, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna check the sex offender list thing. I'm just gonna see what's on there.
Oh yeah.
Man, so I checked on the list. I was in one apartment, and I saw this guy, and literally I see this guy like every morning. And I didn't know he stayed like literally like an apartment above me. And then he had kids, but it looked like, I don't know if he like what the deal was. It's probably like some young girl, and I think he was a little bit older. It looked like that, but I was like, damn, I can't believe this dude is really on it. I never asked him or nothing like that. And shortly after that, I don't know what happened, but he moved out. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the deal was. But yeah, I think you should always just be mindful and stuff like that, because even like teaching, like talking to my kids about like sex ed and stuff, like it was actually kind of funny when I had to talk to my kids, because my older son, I talked to him, but my younger son I hadn't because he's 6. But what happened was I was actually out of town, and then they're like, hey, we're gonna show this video. I was like, oh damn. I was like, I'm out of town right now. So then I was like, okay, go ahead and show the video. I talked to him real quick, like briefly. I was like, okay, I'm gonna call him up, talk to him. Daddy ain't gonna be back in town for another couple of weeks. And then I would say probably maybe like 6 months after that, I said, look, man, I'm gonna tell you the religious way. Wait till you get married, and then I'm gonna tell you the other way too. You know, you go out there, get the itchy scratchy or something like that. Hey, I can't help you, but you need to wait till you get married. But I know you probably ain't gonna do that, so I'm gonna tell you like this. But you come over there, somebody, you got bumps and scratches, I'm gonna be like, Daddy's over. So I don't know what to tell you. So you gotta keep it real with them. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I love it. I love it. Any other closing thoughts, or am I good to move us on?
Can I just say my last thing really quickly
go ahead,
is
Mike.
just I would encourage, if anybody, any parents are listening to this, that do not let fear or awkwardness keep you from having these conversations. It's just in human behavior. That's generally why people avoid. This is too important to allow that to happen. If you do feel unprepared for it, there are resources out there, and like Jay said, you could probably email any one of us, and certainly me, can point you to solid, basic, age-appropriate resources that are very actionable for any parent.
Love it. I love it. Well, guys, now that the opening dad news of the week warmed us up a little bit, I didn't think we were gonna go for 40 minutes on that topic, but hey,
43-minute warm up.
I was a little warm up there, just get you guys going a little bit.
This is what happens when you put a bunch of talkers in the same room.
I know. I literally put six people who do podcast or podcast guests or social media all together on one thing. So it's okay. We're learning, right? We're learning. And I think it's good, though. This discussion is fantastic. We went deep into it. A lot of similar thoughts, different thoughts, things like that. And I think it's great. So now that we're warmed up, let's get into why we're here. Everyone brought something to the table. Could be a story, a question, hot take, a struggle. We'll go around. Each one of us is going to bring it up. We'll chop it up together. No wrong answers, no filters, just real conversation. So that's the purposes for the listeners. So we're going to go down and we're going to have our roundtable discussion now. Not the itchy scratchy Demetrius said in the chat.
That was the first time I've ever heard that. I was over here cracking up, bro.
Title, not the itchy scratchy.
Not the itchy scratchy.
Or got the itchy scratchy title suggestion right there. Or or the damn bird, could be another one here. Don't mind the bird. Anyways, okay, I'm just gonna start. I don't have these in any particular order. So does anyone want to shoot their shot first with their topic that they brought to the table today, or I can volunteer somebody? Okay, guys,
Volunteer,
not
man.
everyone, not
Yeah,
everyone at once
volunteer.
now. Come on now.
I'll always go first if nobody goes. So, but
Same.
yeah, just
Well,
pick.
Eric, you were
Pick a
first on the
number.
list though. So Eric,
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, see,
It's meant to be, Eric.
it was meant to be that you said that.
Just
So
make sure your bird can chime in along the way.
Eric
right?
must have got the itchy scratchy.
Oh no, I've never had no issue. It's craziness.
Anyways, Eric, go ahead and shoot us with your
Um,
topic. What you wanted to bring to the table today?
so I don't have it right in front of me. My wife is currently using my phone. So, oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good
All
eye.
right, so here we
Teamwork.
go.
Got a
So,
producer.
That's
Yeah,
teamwork right
right.
there, producer.
so what I wanted to bring to the table was how the relationship between the parents impact our children. Um, this is one that's very like near and dear to my heart, especially because the environment that I grew up in. Uh, I didn't have. I only grew up with my mom, and my mom always had different boyfriends. And my mom isn't a person that is a good communicator almost at all. At least when I was a kid, she's a lot better now, so I'll give her some kudos for that. But um, they used to have these really, really nasty fights all the time. I used to watch my mom get beat on. Uh, my sister and I, were the two older siblings, and then I have a younger brother. But my sister and I used to get into fights with her boyfriends and things of that nature, whether it was to stop them from beating on her or beating on us, that kind of thing. But I never noticed how that affected me until I became an adult. And the first time I ever noticed it was I got into a really, really bad argument with my girlfriend at the time, but she is now my wife. Um, and I got, I all I could see was red, and I didn't put my hands on her, but the way that I talked to her, I crossed the line, and ultimately I tried to leave. Well, after I crossed the line, I got shoved into the wall, and she put me through the wall. Like the outline of my ass had bust through the wall because she pushed me so hard. And this is where like I had realized that like I was having an issue dealing with just my anger and my anger within having conflict. And later on in life, we had another big argument. And this time, my children, I have multiple children now. I have all of them now. At the time, my son was only a couple months old, so he doesn't remember this. But now we're talking about 3 years ago. So all of my children were here. And I got into this one really, really bad argument with my wife. And I, I ripped a banister off the wall. I broke our vacuum cleaner from kicking it. And I also broke like an electric like heater, electric space heater in the process of leaving the house and storming out because I was so frustrated. And my wife told me that my son said something to her after I had left and she was crying. And essentially I realized in that moment that I had left my child's son to console my wife in a time of emotional need. And it took for me to get to that point to realize that my behavior in our relationship was affecting my children. And not only my children, but the way that they see us, see me, and are going to think this is what a relationship looks like, much like how it turned out for me. And I had to do, I went to therapy for 2 years to start working through being able to process my anger and being a better communicator so that way I wouldn't continue the cycle that I had to endure as a child and then ultimately into my young adulthood. Um, so I say all that to say, I'm not sure if anybody's had like conflict with their significant other, but our children are always watching and they're always listening. And we have to be mindful of that in moments where we're having our normal human emotions, even if they're big emotions, but they're always watching and they're always listening. I
Yeah.
really wanted to bring that to the table. Maybe you guys have some stuff that you'd like to add on good communication, healthy communication amongst the parents in the household.
Well, I think it's worth naming just out the gate that what we don't want to do is overcorrect in the opposite direction and just in front of our kids put on this facade and always pretend like everything is fine. Uh, and that's what a lot of parents will do is they will put on the face and like everything, but then like behind there's the tension and it creates this inauthenticity. And what it also does is it creates this false understanding of reality for the child that when they start to feel big emotions, but they never saw big emotions navigated in a healthy way, they're going to think something's wrong with them or they're going to be ill equipped to navigate it. And so I think it's worth naming out the gate that we're not saying just off the leash, and we're also saying, not saying hide it all away. Like, how do we
Yeah,
find this healthy in between space?
that's always the tough part, because now my wife and I are at a point in our lives where it's like we might have disagreements, but we don't have fights. And even if the disagreement gets a little loud, you know, we still know that we love each other first and foremost, so that we're not gonna let this one battle, derail everything. That's first and foremost. At that time in our lives, that was a big thing where it's like it always felt like a make or break kind of thing. And then the second thing is you're right, because seeing conflict is also a healthy thing, because if they've never seen it and they've never seen it processed and worked through, then they don't know what that looks like for themselves either. So I'm glad you brought up that point.
Yeah, that was a good one. Jay, I mean, I hope you're prepared to go for like 2 hours. I'm
Oh, I'm
so
ready.
glad Eric
I'm
brought
ready.
this.
I think this topic
I'm
is
on
so
the East
important, right?
Coast too, man.
I
East
think
Coast.
I think this topic that Eric brought up is so important, right? Because I think it's really overlooked in a lot of situations, a lot of relationships. This is highly overlooked to where we get complacent, right? We get comfortable, we get busy, we get we just get I think complacency is the best way to say it. And we just, kind of forget how we're supposed to interact, and things get lax, or we forget that, oh shoot, like I forget who I'm talking to because I'm talking to so many people all day, um that, oh, I forgot that you're this person, you're up here, everyone else is kind of down here, you should be like way up here, but I'm talking to you like you're down here. And we get that mixed up, and so I think that's where we forget that. And then when our kids, like you mentioned, our kids see us, interacting a certain way all the time together, that's what they're then going to mimic, that's what they're going to learn from, that's how they're going to treat their mother, or that's how they're going to treat the women in their lives, or the men in their lives, for our daughters and whatnot, right? And for our sons, how they treat the women in their lives. And so it all flows from us, right? It all comes from, we're the waterfall that's going down the ridge into their river, right? Whatever our waterfall is pouring down is what they're going to pick up, and how their river is going to flow. So I think that's really important to remember. But no, it's such a great topic. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. It's an awesome topic. I could go in so many directions with this, but I want to say, Eric, good on you, man, for bringing up something vulnerable and taking ownership, to give us an example of a situation from which you learned that we can then use as a platform to talk about something that is extremely important and a huge part of my world and my work. So something about which I'm very, very passionate, and it takes vulnerability to do that. So I just respect that from you.
Thank you.
A lot of thoughts come up for me. One is that obviously, like it's been said, kids notice everything, and I think even some very educated parents overlook how young that starts, because they are not just learning behaviors from us. They're not just like watching how mom and dad interact and deciphering, okay, this is how male female interactions go and marriages work and that kind of thing. They are learning how to feel. Their neurobiology is literally, I mean, is very, very much still forming, in young children. Um, I consider our number one job as parents to be providing, the basic human needs for our children. And as children, safety and security is one that they cannot provide for themselves. So that's our job to provide that safety and security until they can provide for themselves. Things like explosive fighting um, around your children is more than them just seeing bad behavior modeled. It's creating fear, and I know this is a, a buzzword for some people in one way or another, but it is absolutely a trauma um, in that it is impactful on their developing neurobiology and the way that their brain will process fear um, for the rest of their lives. That's a pretty huge impact. That's a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
that we have.
Yeah.
I think really by just utilizing keeping ourselves healthy and keeping our communication, at a standard with which we're comfortable. So, living by our values basically, like as much as we can all the time, is the easiest way to ensure that bad things don't bleed into, our marriage or our relationships, or that we get complacent, like Jay said. Um, so keeping ourselves well, and being intentional in the way that we communicate with other people, I think immediately will translate and pay dividends in terms of what our children pick up from us. And I don't want to dominate the conversation because I really could talk about this forever, but
You're good, Mike. Casey, what you got?
I think one of the things through couples therapy that my clients have found most helpful, that I actually didn't come up with myself, but I wish I would have because it's brilliant, is having like a 30-minute to an hour business meeting with our spouse every week, which can kind of like encapsulate all the negative emotion that comes along with having a roommate, all the conversations about schedules and child care and the household and all those things can be sort of like, well, I can defer this argument, or in some cases nagging, depending on who you're talking about, to that Sunday meeting. And it's like a date on the calendar that you keep every week. And if I can sort of defer to that time, that opens up my ability to communicate with not only even like the thought process of that deflection gives us some physiological reaction, like I did something about it, even if I just told myself like I'm gonna do this later, or I'm gonna talk about this later. That even does something in hardwiring us to like re-engage the executive instead of the threat. You know how security guards are like they look inept at every store that you go into. You are deferring all of your knowledge and skills onto the security department instead of the executives in the upper offices if we just respond with that amygdala instantaneous impulse. But when we can defer to the Sunday meeting or whatever day it happens to be, then we can sort of encapsulate that negative emotion, logically think about like what is actually valuable here, what is meaningful, what is purposeful, what do I need to bring up, and then the rest of it, pretty much washes out because you don't bring up the nitpicky stuff, the naggy stuff, usually by Sunday or whatever day, you're like, this isn't that important. So it is I wish I had been that smart. I could tell you who I stole it from, but it has been really helpful for my clients. And they have found they're like, that was genius. And I again wish I could be like, yeah, I really came up with that. But it is very helpful. And then, of course, having a date, because I have clientele that come in that are so enraptured in negative emotion in their environments and in the relationships, I'm like, why would you even keep this? If my life was like yours, I would leave too. And I am the most pro marriage counselor you will ever find. I literally think it is not good for anyone to get divorced. Almost anyone. Almost. So, but if you don't begin to generate that positive emotion, if you don't have any reason to fight, then we're not resilient. We don't have that dopamine that is necessary in goal directed activities and being resilient against stress when the fights come. So if it's all been negative and I feel like I've been nagged at, and then there's like, four other things that we just talked about that only roommates talk about because we cohabitate. And now at the end of the day, maybe spiciness in the bedroom is off the table and I feel rejected. Well, I don't have any safeguard against coming out firing about that because it ultimately, I just didn't have the positive emotion in that relationship. So date your wife or your spouse and have a business meeting every week. Treat it like a communist. We all pitch in based on our abilities. Treat it like a communist household in that way. It's the only promotion of communism I'll ever give. And then the rest
That's
of it,
that's a
treat
fact,
it
guys.
like
That's
a
an
romance.
absolute fact. He won't give any other
No, I
endorsement of
will not.
communism. That's
But
the one.
my
That's
house
The
legit the
one and
one and
done.
only thing.
my house runs like a communist camp because people have different skills, whatever. But treat the rest of it like a romance and really treat her like, novelty, newness, that hits the long-term memory better. So I can say I love you every day, but if I show her I love her in unique ways, that tends to do better. So maybe we can dodge those fights in the first place if we just treat our households a little differently.
I mean, we're talking about intentionality here, right? And it goes back to what Jay said earlier, to the three P's or the three R's. Are we being proactive or are we being reactionary? And and I think it plays out on two levels, and we've heard both play out. So what Casey just brought up is intentionality as a couple, as one unit, as a team. But I like that idea of oneness because that goes a whole other level. Because you could be a team, but then like get rid of players. But if you're like you said, Casey, you're pro marriage, not divorce, which means there is this commitment to staying bound, right? And so we can be intentional as one unit we are on the same team. We are working together, even when it seems like we're against each other. We are putting things in place to intentionally function as one unit. And that can have powerful, immediate impacts, right? But then the other part is what Eric brought up is intentionality within ourselves. Because if we're honest, the way we normally perceive conflict is it's largely the other person's problem. Like if they just stopped looking at me this way or talking to me this way or doing this thing, like if I know I'm not perfect, but if they stop doing that, things would be better. Like that, as humans, we tend to put the most burden on the other person. And what we tend to forget is this really, really hard reality that we can't control or change people. Like we think we can, but who we can really have a large impact on is ourselves. And so Eric was talking about when he started to realize these things, starting to do some self work, right? Starting to figure out, let me look back at my past. Let me look at my present. Let me figure out my future, right? Like we can do work to try to understand how is it I respond in conflict? What are my triggers? Are there any past traumas that existed? Are there any stressors in my life now? And how could that influence how I respond and react? So that's a big piece of it. But then the other goes back to that oneness. How can I function, me, myself, in such a way that I am promoting that oneness rather than expecting my spouse to function a certain way so that oneness can exist. And that's hard because that's going to take some sacrifice. Sometimes that's going to mean dying to yourself. Sometimes that's going to mean some long suffering, especially if there is trauma at the table, especially if there are mental health struggles, especially if there is stress in the home, a job loss, a new child, all these things. Like if we can grow in being able to say, all right, no matter what's going on, I, one, have chosen to commit to this person, period. And two, I'm going to strive to live that out right now and every day. Like that in and of itself can change things. And for me, being being a Christ follower, I believe that there is this thing that can be outside of myself that can play into it. You know, Jesus talks about, I'm sending the helper who can teach you all things. Because I'll be honest with you, there's plenty of times where I'm like, I don't have the strength anymore. I don't have the desire anymore. I am livid at this situation, right? Uh, and sometimes God sneaks in and whispers something that I look back and I'm like, that had to be him because that was not me. I had no love left for my wife and somehow I was able to love my wife. That had to be God. And then learning, okay, well, then how can I lean into that as well instead of relying just on my own strength? Because I know for a fact my strength is limited, my understanding's limited. And so that's the other piece is an intentionality to something beyond just my own capacity. And that's hard as well because us humans, we don't like to be dependent or out of control.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I wanted to say something. Now I just lost the thought. Oh, Casey, you're right. What you talked about the idea of that weekly meeting, the business meeting, prompted a thought for me. I just wanted to mention that I think it's important to recognize it's not just fighting that can impact our children, right? Like they are receiving messaging from us in everything we do. So, for example, my parents did not, well, there was a fair amount of fighting too, but aside from that, the conversations about money, I can remember from a young age instilling a lot of fear in me because it was just something I didn't understand. And it's not like we were in, I don't think, a terrible position, but again, we're creating their perception of safety and security. So even if they weren't fighting about it, our perception of what is a safe topic is different than that of a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old and etc. So just want to make that.
And then, Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add on this?
No, I didn't really particularly bring necessarily anything to talk about as far as that. I was just gonna try to focus on the main topic, which is Roblox, and then just how kids are interacting and what they're doing with adults. And I think this is the first time too, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna come in here hot and just go.
Love it.
That's it.
Love it.
Nah, I'm just gonna roll with it.
I love it.
You know
And then
that
there,
brings up something interesting though, Chris, because coming back to the Roblox piece, what if there's a scenario in which the dad's very much into video games, gaming, grew up gaming and all that, and is like, I see no problem with Roblox. And the mom's like, I hate video games. I don't think it should exist at all. And you two are having to make a big decision on this thing in which you are on opposite end of the spectrum. So I think that's another piece of this as well, is when it's not just conflict between the spouses, but the actual things impacting the kids. Are the parents on the same team or are they button heads?
It's okay. So yeah, going back to what you saying, Paul. That's a so. First of all, I'm not even married. I'm divorced. So that's a good part. But I'm glad you mentioned that. So that actually brings it up because actually, so when we were married, I think we agreed on some things, but actually, when it comes to co-parenting, I just tell her we just doing business as usual. That's how it always is. Like I don't even pay for their phones or nothing like that. Both of my kids got phones, but she pays for the phone. I thought the grandma was paying, but apparently, I was talking to her yesterday. She was talking. My ex-wife was talking about buying me a chair because of soccer games. I don't have a chair, so she can give me a chair. But when we co-parent, it's when we talk about certain things and stuff like that. I think because my son got grounded the other day. I don't know what type of argument they got in an argument about something. And she took his phone away. First it was 6 weeks, then it went down to a week, and then they wanted me to talk. Then they tried to get me involved, and I'm like, y'all need to work that out. Like, so like when we talk a lot of times, I'm just like, y'all look, y'all need to just get along. I keep telling y'all that. I said we talk, we just talk about things. But yeah, I would say as far as Roblox, she's never mentioned nothing to me. She's with the Snapchat thing because I didn't even know. I know my son wanted to get on Snapchat, and then he asked her, his mom, and then after that, there's some type of code she put on the phone, and like, man, she got like a tracker on him and everything. I was like, okay, because one, I don't know if y'all ever seen this. It's like a Apple Air tracker type of thing. So I don't know how this thing necessarily works all the way. But I was on my phone one day and I was like, "What's this thing over here? We got a tracker in the house. So what's this tracker thing going on?" So I had to ask him. Come to find out, she got a tracker and she tried. I said, "Oh well, actually, I like that." I was like, "Okay," because I knew about it, but I never bought one. So a lot of times I know about what's going on, but I mean, for me, I never really like just as far as parenting and stuff like that. I can't really remember a time when like I really had a major issue. Except like the other day we were talking about paying for soccer and stuff. And then I told her, hey, look, just hold on a second. You know, we're going to go half and half like you want to. Just give me a couple months. We're going to go ahead and work our way there. She's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I was like, okay, cool. We good? Yeah. All right, cool. So, I mean, that's all my 2 cents because I know we talking about parenting and stuff. But yeah, Paul, I like that question. That's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to a couple things here, right? Like our relationship that we have with the other parent of our children, or whether that's in the home, whether that's a co-parenting relationship, or whatever that relationship looks like for your children, whether that's with a step parent that's also involved. It's so important to make sure that's a healthy relationship. I love what Casey said. Have those business meetings, continue to date, continue to make it romantic, continue to do the things you can for each other. Don't fall into a place of complacency. I think is the biggest part here, right? Because complacency is the what's the saying? Like complacency is the breeding ground for bad things, something bad. I don't remember how the saying goes, but that's the gist of it. Like when you're complacent, that's when bad things happen, right? Because you're not caring as much, you're not paying as much attention, you're not as proactive, you're not as prepared, you're not as preventative. And that's when you fall into bad habits. That's when you fall into a really rough time, and that's when things go to the wayside. That's when relationships end, marriages end, and whatnot. So it's important to nurture that relationship, take good care of that relationship, because I think, like several of us mentioned, what we do, we're laying that foundation for how their future relationships with the opposite sex is going to be. Um, right? So, moms, if there's any moms listening to this, how you treat your husband is important for your daughters. Dads, how you treat your wives is important for your sons and your daughters, and vice versa, right? Like it's all important, right? Because it's important for our sons to know how women should treat them. It's important for our daughters to know how men should treat them, and vice versa, how women should treat women, how men should treat men. And it's important for them to see those things. It's important for them to pick up on those things, be around those things. And just to shout out what Demetrius said here in the comments. He said, working through the conflict, yes, needs to be seen. Nothing is perfect. I think that's super important, right? To make sure that, yes, our kids are going to see us fight, right? They're unfortunately it's gonna happen. We can try our best to make it so they won't, but the day's gonna come. It's gonna happen. We can try our best, but it's gonna happen. Um, all we can do is try, right? We're not perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. We're not created to be perfect, but um, it's important for them to see that repair. Just as equally as important it is to make sure that we repair with them as well, and go and talk to them as well, to see them working through the conflict, to have them have those conversations with them and say, hey, I know mommy and daddy got into it earlier. I could tell you were a little scared, you got upset, you were really quiet. And then just giving them that reassurance as well and giving them that space, I think is super important as well, just to make them feel, again, like Mike said, we're laying the foundation for their safety and their security. Um, so making sure that, they know that they're still safe, things are still good, they got nothing to worry about. You guys worked through it, they saw you work through it, and then they got the reassurance in the end as well. I think is a really important step here towards the end of it. Any other thoughts on this, or I'm going to volunteer the next person to go with their topic?
Do it, man.
Good, 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 good. All right, let's go to Paul. You're next. Actually, I think this one works, kind of a flow. Paul,
Yeah.
go ahead and tell us what you brought to the table, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah. So we've talked about how we kind of invest ourselves as fathers into making sure our kids are safe. And we were just talking about how we invest ourselves into our wives to make sure that relationship is healthy. And so the prompt that I had put out there was, uh, finding that healthy tension between a dad pouring himself out for his family and making sure that he's filled up. And I think it's tricky because, different dads, different fathers, different husbands, it's going to play out differently. There's that classic 90s sitcom trope of the father who's just every night he's out with the guys, right? And, getting, that's how he's getting his poured into, probably not focusing, like Casey said, on prioritizing the date nights and all that. Then you get the other end of the spectrum of the man who's feeling very isolated because he's not being able to he's not getting out with the guys for whatever reason. There's a struggle. And for me, one of the things that I've been navigating is, 3 kids, so that demands a lot of time. Our kids, over the years, we've been navigating various struggles, mental health things like that. I mentioned I'm 7 years full-time volunteer ministry, everything that comes with that, but had a really rough, toxic ministry environment before that. So there was some hard seasons. We navigated miscarriages. Like, there's all these things that can be draining for me. And then one thing that my wife's been navigating as long as I've known her is just a really intense mental health, spiritual situation that happened nearly 2 decades ago that impacts her sometimes daily to this day. Right. So I find myself in this place uh, as someone who is constantly having to pour himself out for his kids, for his wife, for his community and ministry, and often not being poured into. In fact, a lot of those spaces, sometimes it's not reciprocal, right? And I have been thinking a lot about what does self-care is a buzzword in a lot of spaces, and it can feel like a selfish thing in Christian and ministry spaces, but there is something to a mindfulness of not neglecting oneself. And so for me, what it's looked like, and as I've thought through, what are some of the life-giving things that I can do? I'm frugal, and also, you know, volunteer ministry doesn't pay a whole bunch. Uh, so I got to navigate that. And a year ago, my wife, for Father's Day, got me um, a couple of months of Movie Pass, and Movie Pass was back. I won't get into the weeds. It's fine. It's not the greatest deal, but what it has done, and I've continued to keep it, is I'm keeping the $10 a month plan because I'm like, that at least is forcing me to make sure that I try to go to at least 2 movies a month. Because movies, I love going to the movie theater. I rarely went before because I can't justify being out of the house for that long, or I can't justify the spending when we don't have the disposable income like that, right? So I'm trying to find these ways for me to be poured into when being poured into isn't happening naturally and organically. And I'll close with this before the other fellas jump in. Uh, there's a lot of research now about loneliness among men. Men struggling to feel like they have strong, lasting relationships. And the older you get, the harder it gets. The more kids you have, the less time you have. All these things. And so I think this is an important topic of how can fathers ensure that they're not just prioritizing and being intentional about pouring into their family, but also not neglecting themselves.
Yeah, this is a great topic, Paul. I think it's something that we've each struggled with. I know I can speak for myself, and I think a lot of men struggle with this as well. Um, feeling that feeling of, man, how do I get time for me? How do I justify being away for this long? How do I make this happen? And I think, we're all pouring into ourselves right now by being here. All 6 of us. And I think that's fantastic that we're doing this, but I think it's also something that's so important to make sure that we're filled in some way, shape, or form, and that it's okay to get away from the hustle culture for a little bit, and it's okay for us to slow down and relax and do something for ourselves. We give all day. I know myself, Mike, Casey, we work in the mental health field. And so we are literally giving all day long to others. And so it can be really difficult. And whether you're, whatever job you're in, you're probably giving all day as long as well, in some capacity, your energy, your time, your just everything that you can, conversations, probably with coworkers and people you don't like or want to be around, and whatnot. And so this is such a important topic, and I want to hear from you guys. So who wants to shoot?
Man, we're being too polite. We're all too polite at this
You
point.
guys, I think we're all
next week we're all going to be
Yeah.
talking over each other.
I know we're all hosts at the same time, so we all know, like, okay, wait for the other person. We're all trying to be respectful. Eric, go ahead and shoot.
I think
Came off mute.
I think the big thing is recognizing that you need that time, because we get, at least I do, get so used to just filling up other people's cups. And and sometimes, it comes to a point where you don't want to even get out of bed. I know I have those days where the alarm goes off, and I hate to hear it go off. Instead of being grateful that, God allowed me to open my eyes on that morning, I'm just dreading the fact that I can hear this beeping. So, and it's those moments, like when I have that feeling of like it's tough to even just start the day, that it's that time again where I need to do the things that are true to me to recuperate and to be able to have something to pour again. Because if I pour anything else, I'm not going to have anything, and I'm not going to be the person that I should show up as on behalf of the people that I love. So it's about, I think the most important thing is recognizing, even before the cup starts to get too low, realizing like, oh, this might be a good time to just take a couple hours for myself. It doesn't have to be. I realize it doesn't have to be a day. It doesn't have to be a weekend. It could be just a couple hours. It could be you showing up for yourself and saying, tomorrow morning I'm gonna just treat myself to some ice cream after work, and actually going to do it, even though as soon as you got in your car, your wife calls and says, "Hey, I really need you to do this." Just knowing that, yo, I really need to get some ice cream. This is what I promised myself, and then show up for yourself as you would for the people that you're pouring into. I love to hike, so that's always my thing. Getting back into nature is my way to reconnect and ground myself. So I'll go on a 4 or 5 mile hike by myself. Sit in the woods, enjoy some lunch by a river by myself, and it just being in nature where it's just me, and I just get to hear the quiet and tranquility and the beauty of nature.
You make a good point there about knowing the things, and particularly like if nature is your thing, it can be a few hours hiking, or just get like a few minutes, right? And that's something that in one of my harder seasons, I felt like I was really pushing me on, because I was well aware of how limited time I had to do it. And I'm like, I'd love to do this, that. I'd love to get away for a weekend, but there's just no way, no way, no way. And I felt like I was nudging me, just go sit on the porch for 5 minutes. And what he did with that 5 minutes, watching the sunset, like it hit me, because we think it's got to be all this, but sometimes the tiniest little steps can have the biggest impact.
Yeah, I think silence is when I remember to pray the most, which seems like ridiculous. I mean, brush your teeth. There are habits that I pray, when I do those things naturally. But when I'm unplugged, ironically, I'm going to be on whatever streaming service this is on right now, telling everybody you need to disconnect from your freaking phone. And at
Not
that
right
point,
now, guys. Don't
yeah,
do it right
not right
now.
yet.
Do it another day, another time. We're
But
not
when
talking about
you
right now. Right now, you're
Not
excused.
right now. Not on Jay. Don't hang up on him. But if you're watching my stuff on YouTube, you certainly should unplug and go take a breather. And those are the times when, like was said, I mean, we read the Bible, but even that habitually, at the same time every day, when we open up those extra spaces just for silence, and it can literally, I know this is how it goes in my house anyway, it can be in the bathroom, the only time that you have 45 seconds, or for some of us, it might be 45 minutes. But if you can catch that without your phone, you're being alone in your thoughts is an amazing thing. And most of the time, it's like a breath of fresh air, but we feel like we're missing something if we don't, or if we're not taking something in at all times. And nature is a really compelling way to realize that the world doesn't require your effort to spin. There's like birds that fly around and trees that grow, and all this stuff happens around us without any of our input, and it really is a refreshment. I loved what Eric had to say about that.
I relate to that so much too, because that's a big thing for me. I a theme I'm recognizing among all these topics, the word intentionality, it keeps coming up, right? And knowing ourselves in this case, I think is what gives us the ability to be intentional about it. So, like, what does fill your cup? Like Eric said, for him, it is, it's nature. I also think there, as you initially spoke to, Paul, there is not a selfish thing about self care, not a single thing about it. Um, I have that I believe that to my core, and I think that it is it's something that's not really. I think there are a lot of things in our culture that work against it. There's almost like some that selflessness is a virtue, and that has some truth to it. But it's almost like extremism in that way is sometimes worn as a badge of honor. I know I did that as a huge workaholic as a football coach. I thought that was a virtuous thing that I was doing, was just giving all my time to this one area of my life. Even that it was benefiting my family and it was benefiting young men and the program and everything. But what I learned as time went on, and maybe Casey can relate to this, is what happens when you neglect yourself for an extended period of time. That's usually the outcome's not great, and that may manifest differently for different people. But I know for me personally that it is, for me to be the father I need to be, the husband I need to be, the friend I need to be, the therapist I need to be. To do all of those things, I have to take care of myself. I have to, or I won't be able to do those things. And many of those things that I value so much in my life will be gone. So again, intentionality. It's crazy to me sometimes talking to people like how that others don't necessarily have a really clear picture of what their values are. I've got a literal list. I mean, and it's dynamic and it's been evolving and kind of changes over 5 years. But like my values, I need to know what they are because that informs my actions. So for me, I know life balance is a value of mine, and because it's so essential to being able to function and show up for people in the way that I want to. Therefore, I am intentional in building structure into my life to have that in place. Eric's out there hiking. I'm kayaking my ass off. I aim for about like 40 kilometers a week. Out on the intracoastal of St. Augustine Beach, if anybody knows that area. And it's killing multiple birds with one stone. Like I said, I would say it's a very efficient use of self-care for me because I'm communing with nature. It has a very spiritual element to me. It has a very meditative element for me. I'm getting
Workout
exercise.
in.
You're working. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm a psycho, so I'm killing myself out there physically.
Why do you think you look
But-
so good, guys? Come on now.
Right,
And
thanks,
there's
Jay.
also a bit of danger in it, which is also a little fun,
Yeah,
where it's
adrenaline.
calculated
Oh, yeah.
risk, so
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
there's something interesting that we should name in this off of what you're saying is, what you just described is something you intentionally chose. You thought through and what impact it will have and why and how it's valuable, right? And I think it's worth naming that there's a difference between self-care and self-medication because sometimes we can go that latter route and really it's not about filling ourselves up, it's about disconnecting or
Absolutely.
avoiding, and that can be really unhealthy. And so I think we need to have a mindfulness around that. And one of the best ways, it goes back to something Casey said earlier, is this can be a part of that business meeting, right? Like we shouldn't just try to navigate this in isolation, because that's probably not going to go well for many reasons. But if you bring it to the conversation and say to your spouse, hey, I'm feeling like utterly sapped. Like I am beyond drained and I need to carve out. I mean, this is something that a conversation I had to have with my wife, and I'm like, I'm having to pour myself out in these various ways. And I think I prayed through it. I believe these are good, important ways, but I'm not being poured into. I have to create spaces in my life for that. And I didn't know how she would respond, right? But she responded well because she loves me. And so she's like, yes, okay, what do you need? How can we make this happen? And so make that a collaborative thing. Like
Yes.
work together in that. And suddenly now it's bringing this other element because indirectly now your spouse is pouring into you without realizing it, right? Or maybe realizing it. Maybe your wife suddenly says, "Oh, this is an easy way for me to invest," or I didn't know that he needed more care. I thought I was caring for him well, but I'm hearing this now, and so, man, make it collaborative. Bring the intentionality into that piece as well.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you're I mean, having a partner in that. I mean, absolutely, just emboldens your efforts, helps you support each other. It helps you have even more clarity talking through those things, naming it like you said with your partner. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, 100%. And let's be real, guys. Sometimes our wives, they don't mind us leaving them alone for a couple hours every week. They don't mind it so much, okay? Let's remember that. Um, they don't mind it too much. Too much now. They might miss us and stuff, but overall it helps them too. Sometimes. But I would also
I don't
say,
know about your wife. My wife would clone me or stuff me if she could.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got to take
yeah,
the kids with you. That's part of
Yeah,
it. You know,
that's
sometimes
I'll do
yeah,
that
that's the
with
that
no
part,
might
yeah.
have to
problem.
be the recipe. But yeah, I agree. I was talking to my best friend, and we have like a Friday night. Our families get together. The kids, go have a rave in the other room, and we all play Settlers of Catan, which is really sounds really boring and dull, but we've done it for like 10 years now, and
No,
it's
that's a
an
great
appointment
game,
we have
Casey.
every week. It's the best game on earth.
That's a
But
great
whatever,
game.
that's just my belief over here in my communist household. But if you can set up like a weekly thing, and even if it's with
Yeah.
them and it's quality time with them, you still get that refreshment. And, ultimately, our kids will remember those years forever that they played with, our best friends, and it shows them that having friendships is important, things like that. But I was talking to my best friend, that wasn't even the point. Um, and we haven't had a poker night in like 6 years. And I was like, man, things get hectic when you have kids. And when you have a multitude of kids, it's even worse. I want to serve. My capacity to serve is reduced if I'm angry and grumpy. And as I get older, too, the amount, and I work a more physical side work and stuff like this too. So I'm not as capable as I used to be. And it's good to know that like my wife has my back and my kids they love me absolutely. But my capacity is running short. And as the Stoics would say, memento mori, death is ever present. So doing those things while you have the opportunity is so important. So sometimes we'll just bust and go down to where you live, Mike, or near there, and just break the bank and be like, who gives a crap? Honestly, this year it's just gonna be tight. But those things, you can do with the family too. Because I would rather, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with my kids or the gym probably. But that's it. So if I'm not doing one of those two things, I'm not caring for myself. Truthfully, I'm not. So, maybe a friend's night would be nice every once in a while, but also being with my children. I shouldn't, recovery's funny. I know I shouldn't be here. So my children are like the incarnation of God's providence in my life that I shouldn't be here. They're here. Why on God's earth would I like be like, I need yeah, I feel so weak doing it. It's like I need to go take 3 hours, and I would probably just prefer to take them with me. I don't know, even if it's just one of them. Maybe one of them. That way, the parental talks can be a little bit more meaningful for them because they're not triangulating between all of them. But self care can include your children too, or your spouse, but maybe a little less than the whole family unit, if it's possible. That makes it special for everybody, I think.
I was gonna say the whole family unit might not be self care anymore. It might be a normal day.
Yeah, that's just Saturday running errands at that point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but no, I love what you're saying here. I think it's important, right? We have to take care of ourselves. We have to make sure that we're filled up in essence, because we are, if we're tired, we're beat down, we're running on fumes. We try to have those one-on-one talks with our kids, we're gonna miss the mark, right?
Yeah.
It's about doing it. If we can do all the little things right, then they're gonna trust us with the big stuff. But if we're so tired and exhausted that we're missing all the little things, we're never gonna get to experience the big things with them when they need us, because we're too tired, we're too beat down, we're unable to answer the call when we're needed if we're not filled up ourselves in doing those things. And plus, if they see us doing those things that are important to us, pursuing our hobbies, pursuing our passions, going out on the Saturday with the boys to go play some pickleball or something, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Um, Going and doing those things that we love and care about. They see us being active, going to the gym regularly, eating healthy, meal prep, whatever it is, right? They're going to pick up on those habits as well, because they see
Modeled
that that's
behavior is
important.
the best teacher.
No doubt.
Yep, and they're going to pick up on all those things. So it's so important. Any
I
other thoughts
I
on
do
this?
want to say this. It's getting kind of close to my bedtime. As you guys may have seen, I'm a couple hours ahead of you guys. So for me, it's about to be 11 o'clock, and I got to be up at 6.
Bet,
So
bet.
Actually, I do
I'm gonna
too.
part. Yeah, I'm gonna participate in part of this, but then I'm gonna jump off
Bet.
somewhere around 11. All right, guys.
All right, let's get to one more topic, and then we'll hit some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap this thing up here, in the next like 25 minutes or so. So we'll go pretty quick. Casey, I want to hit your topic. Um, no offense to anyone else. We're hitting 3 topics tonight just for the sake of everything, but that's okay. We're having a lot of great
Dude,
conversation. Um,
no offense taken. I've been in this chair doing appointments for the last 7 hours.
Oh,
This is why I'm fidgeting and moving so much.
a little bit.
No offense taken, my man.
I hope
25
you guys
minutes.
didn't see me biting my cookie because I'm so
It's okay.
hungry.
I have this little thing right here. It's a little like essential oils like inhaler kind of thing, where it like gives me a little jolt, stick it up the nose. It's real good. I love these things. But anyways, Casey, we're gonna hit yours. Go ahead and tell us your topic, what you brought to the table, and then we'll hit it real quick and then close up.
okay. So thank you so much. Basically, oh gosh, let me just read. I wrote a little bit of it. Um, the contrast between fake freedom that's sold by people who are like in the relationships and women are trash and they're all hypergamous and it's up to us to like just get ours, that sort of fake freedom that's sold by one end of my space of the internet anyway, and then the opposite end, which is the fact that being unified in a relationship with a partner who balances you out is what it is to be able to accomplish true freedom. And it's essentially the war for manhood and masculinity is real. And whether we like it or not, it's taking place online. And, we have people who are foregoing meaning and purpose in order to have basically as much multiple partners and novelty as they want, as well as money, over pursuit of money. And it's basically the revolt against feminism, the pendulum swinging back on certain fronts of the internet. And I've also been privy to, as I work with men over the last 13 years, a great many men who've had their children not having had access to their children based on divorces, not having had access to part of their fortunes, or other ways that men have been disabused when they do get into relationships with women that may have had ill intention, or maybe they just are responding to the times and left them. So basically, the war for masculinity is being waged whether we like it or not. And I think all the men here have been a good representation of what it looks like to have the type of masculinity that's servant oriented, but also desire to be wise about our decisions. But I'll be frank, guys, we're losing. We are losing the battle. for what the next generations see masculinity as and what they're going to take on. And I'll be frank again, the birth rate is a direct reflection of that. The lack of marriages. There was a survey that said 51% of men between 18 and 31 reported having had no sex within the last year. That's devastating. And I don't want men to have sex out of wedlock. I would love it if they all were religious all of a sudden, and that's the reason why they're not having sex. It's not. There is a war for what masculinity looks like and what relationships look like. And I find that in my space, I'm willing to call out feminism when it's wrong, and I'm willing to call out, masculinity when it's wrong. However, I'm one of very few men on my corners of the internet that are willing to represent women as being an absolute abundant good in your life. And that is the battle for the future, whether we like it or not. It's here, and I don't know who else has Gen Z clients that you see. Um, the incel thing, that's probably overused, but it's real. Men are checking out at a vast majority. It's a statistical majority of men have not pursued relationships. A vast many of them have never asked a girl out in person. And some of these things are because they're afraid of being recorded. When they ask your girl out, they're afraid that if they do end up in a relationship that they'll be taken. They're afraid that if there's pregnancies, that will be something that will subject them to vulnerabilities. But the Andrew Tates of the world sell a tempting bill of goods, and while he might identify some of the problems correctly, his solutions are far off base. But marriage and relationships have provided balance, purpose, meaning, and children to me. And being a father was something that when I was using, I had no, I usually don't even talk about my recovery, whatever. We started with that. It's been a while, whatever.
The safe
So
space, man.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So
Absolutely, no doubt.
in any case, I didn't even plan to have children, but after I began being a father, I can see God's design and how this is what I was always intended to be. And that's part of the reason I started my channel was to begin to defend the integrity of fatherhood, the meaning and purpose that's embedded in fatherhood, and the ways that my wife and those children have balanced my wild ass out to the point where my survival and I'll be real again. I had a complete and total loss of status, lost a job because of an internet affair that I had with a woman about 5 years ago. I lost my job, lost my reputation, lost the nonprofit I was on, lost the boards that I was on, lost all status. And had it not been for my wife and children, her loyalty for one thing, and my devotion to them above all else. And if I was a single man at that time, I would not be here. I guarantee it. And had she left me, I might not be here. Had I not had those children, I definitely would not be here. Those are the ways that men are checking out with substance use, overuse. You know what I mean? Some of these things, we can't say on certain platforms, but when you use too many drugs, what happens to you? When you self delete or decide to take your way out, all of those things are the result of not having meaning and purpose embedded in the lives of men, along with employment. And the reason why, I'm trying to fight to protect this relationship, marriage, fatherhood, integrity triad is because I wouldn't be here without it. And I want that for other men. And I work with men every day that are devoid of purpose. And apart from God's direct intervention in their life, they may not get to the place where they get to see and enjoy the steak and the sunset and the putting your kids to bed and being able to hold your wife at the end of all of it. Hard as it is, men are leaving it behind. And they're leaving it behind at rates higher than we've ever measured. And I'm seriously concerned that there won't be anybody in the nursing home to wipe my ass in 40 years because there won't be any kids left. And I do think that part of how we participate online has made a difference. Now, first of all, though, my kids will be wiping my ass because I've got four of them. One of them will be there. But
Someone's gonna wipe this
that's right.
ass.
It's
But
gonna
it
be one of
is.
you kids.
This is gonna be rock
If
paper
you're watching
scissors
this
shoot.
later, I love you guys. Nothing too harsh was said. But I want this for men because I love men and I love them. I want them to succeed. I want them to thrive. And I just think that it's God's design that this was the way it was supposed to be in monogamous relationships with somebody who can balance your wildness and risk taking, and then having eventually, if God wills it, having children that can also give you that when all else fails, that one last vestige, that silo of meaning that will help you carry on.
I don't know about you
That
guys, but I
was
don't got anything to add to that. I think that was
that was
absolutely
very. I
beautiful.
mean, it was very eloquent, but it was very layered. There's a couple things I
Casey.
wanted to speak to, but yeah, it was so layered. Um, I'm not necessarily sure we're under attack. I think that I'll speak to like the falling birth rates and men not wanting to get involved and things like that. Like I think it's because over the past 40 years we've been watching the man be devalued across the board. You know what I'm saying? 70% of marriage, nearly half of all marriages end in divorce, and 70% of the time it's the woman who's throwing in the towel. A lot of the time, I don't know,
80%. It's not
80%.
70, it's 80.
Okay, so even higher. So I got a 20% chance of success, 20 to 30% chance of success, and then you tie into social media and the internet and them constantly showing that you can have better than what you have and constantly thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. Even myself have fallen victim to it in my younger adult years and teenage years and things of that nature. And I've been with the same person since I was 16 years old. We just made 14 years together last week on the 22nd, and 6 years of marriage
Cheers.
this past July. Thank
Cheers.
you. But it's hard, and it goes back to all the things that we spoke about, I think, over the past hour and 47 minutes, whether it is communication, whether it is finding that time to reground yourself, whether it is people in the household not seeing value in what a man provides, even if it is just a sense of security or a paycheck. I don't know. Like I said, it was very layered. It was very eloquent, and I do think that men have been under attack for some time. I do think that where I disagree with you is that there is a new generation of man here. I know that from when I was a kid. I'm only 30 years old, but I knew one person with a father, and he didn't have a mother. So we all grew up with moms, and he was the only one with a dad, but he was the only parent there as well. So now I'm 30 years old with my own children. Many of the people I grew up with, graduated high school with, met in my young adulthood that I consider friends. We're all fathers. I walk around to basketball courts and they got their kids down there, and I'm not just sure if it's in the area that I grew up in and I live in that I'm seeing the change, but there went from a time where you'd be lucky to see one to you see them all everywhere all the time now. And for me, that is very encouraging, not only because I'm living it as well and I didn't have one, but also because I know these people didn't have one either, and they're showing up just as we are. And then I also think the other biggest thing is I do think people are coming back to God. I know what the like not that media version of God where you want to uh, use it to your benefit, but like actually growing their relationships with God. And I see it every week when I go to church. I see it all the
Hmm.
time on my social media platforms where people that have walked all types of crazy lives have changed themselves, have legit went through a transformation, and have the testimony to prove that they have been touched by something higher than themselves. So I agree with you on a lot of it. I do think that the man is back. I don't think he's coming back. I think the man is back. I think it just looks different from the traditional idea of what a man is and what a man was at one time or another. I
Yeah,
think it. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
absolutely true. There's a great book by a gentleman named Brad Wilcox, who the book is titled Get Married. He says that and his point was that men who invest in like parent co-parenting really, which is excellent. I love to hear that, you go to the basketball game and you see all the dads there. That's so important. And that is
It's
different,
dope,
right?
man.
Because they'd
Yeah,
be cooking out on the town doing something else 30 years ago probably. And that may be
right.
the reason why so many of these marriages weren't successful. Boomers couldn't show us a successful marriage no matter how hard they tried, right? So I do think that men have changed, and even the men that I meet with in counseling have changed. They're better at being dads. They're better at like social emotional stuff, which even drives me crazy sometimes because I'm like, dude, grow a
Yeah.
sack and go chop some wood, and this would be better.
That's
But in any case, yeah, I do think that we're different. But his basic premise is that if you are a striver, meaning you're like educated or business oriented and that type of stuff, you're culturally conservative and you go to church, then your marriages have much greater rates of reported satisfaction. So like much higher, like double. And even if you have one of those, because it could be any faith orientation, or it could be, you're just associated with the conserving your own culture and people, it doesn't have to be like left wing, right wing conservatism, then you have a much greater chance of expecting to have a happy marriage. And I do think that that was, if one good thing, maybe more than one good thing came out of this, but one of the good things, very few, that came out of feminism was men are more active in their roles in the household. And it's not just like I work and I'm expected to do nothing after that. You know what I mean? And I do appreciate that so much out of what's come out of the last 50 years. And now I think we're trying to find our new
a
how
new
do we fit
balance.
into this? And
Yeah,
you're right, we have been attacked in media. My other topic was how men are misrepresented in media because I just did a video on this about a month ago. Over the last 50 years, I went from Andy Griffith and Dick Van Dyke to Homer Simpson and like some other nonsensical. I don't even watch modern TV. Modern Family dude who had Phil Duffy or Phil Dunphy. That guy's a rube, dude. If that's a representation of a man, get me the hell. No wonder people don't want to sign up for that. Nobody wants to be like that. A real man wants to be masculine and protect his family. The culture has shifted and it has attacked us. You can't say men's rights this or men's issues that and not get trust me. You can't say any of that and not just get lambasted on the internet.
Yeah.
It's they believe they have won. What we truthfully need is balance. And there are good things my wife brings that I need. There's good things that I bring. But men, if you stifle men and you become a feminist culture, we're reaping the rewards of that in some ways, and it's not good. Yeah, most divorces are initiated by women, all that. Yeah, 70, 80%. That's rotten, you know,
Yeah, 80% by women.
and the expectation is that they get the kids. To be honest, if I was a family court judge, I'd be like, Mom, you get 80-20 custody until age 9. Dad gets 80-20 from 9 to 18 because that's where the training ground is for fathers. You nurture, they train. Like there you go. If you really want 50-50, that's how it's going to be. Psychologically, that's more relevant than just going into like, oh, well, Mom gets them. Mom got
yeah.
them, and then you get the checks and all that stuff too. That's rotten. The
So
system is rotten.
so one piece in all this
Absolutely.
then that I'm hearing is there's this nuance element. So like if you gathered 1,000 people over 1,000 generations, had them define what masculinity is, what manhood is, we're going to find that different in different cultures, different spaces, in media, and so forth. And that's where it can get really tricky because as you were talking, Eric, it was getting me thinking about my own experience around typically in church, if you have a men's retreat, there's going to be guns, there's going to be sports, there's going to be all these things. Well, my dad passed away when I was 5. And I found that who I was looked different than kids who had their dads, because where do many people develop their love of sports? Through that male figure who's watching sports. You know, for me, I never got into hunting because not long after my dad passed, I got a stepfather, and he's not my dad. And so I wasn't overtly thinking this, but internally there's this resistance to him. So the things he likes, sports, NASCAR, I wasn't going to like, right? And that led me to a place where by the time I got into adulthood, I didn't fit the traditional masculine thing, because in conversation, like, I'd be around a bunch of guys, they're all talking about the sports team they like, and I'm like, I got nothing for you. To this day, I'm just not a sports guy, right? And so when it is broad swept what a man is, people who fall into these nuanced spaces like I am can end up being harmed. Now, fortunately, I feel like God has been guiding me through life of what it means to be who he's created me to be, what it means to love my wife, what it means to care for my kids. But there are people that I've known who didn't have a healthy relationship with God and didn't have other healthy relationships, and just found themselves in this space of not knowing, well, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to function? What is my identity? And so I think that's one piece where I see the power of relationship, where it's not just like yelling at each other on the internet, but people actually getting to know each other and walking with each other and understanding each other and hearing each other's stories. That's why, several of you mentioned you're in roles where that's your job, is to give someone a space to process all this stuff. And so I think that's a big part of it, is we do not have a collective understanding of what manhood is, what masculinity is, but we do have a whole lot of division and anger and fear that can lead to us to be reactionary, right? I think the other piece of this then is what's driving us. You started off, Casey, talking about this idea of freedom. We don't even have a holistic understanding of what freedom is, because for most of us, what freedom is I can do what I want to do. Nobody's controlling me. And I think we're all old enough to know that there are so many things in life that have more control over us than we have over them, right? And so while you were talking, Casey, I looked up the classic freedom verse, Galatians 5:1. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. And then if you bounce back to chapter 4, it says, formerly when you did not know God, you were slaves to those who by nature are not God's. But now that you know God, or rather are known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and miserable forces? And all I could think of was, we want freedom to be nothing is controlling us. But, I believe we live in this reality where a God exists, which means there's a God of the universe that controls all things. And if I'm striving to break from that, and I'm striving to break from anything else, it's going to lead me to live in a very fearful way or a very controlling way. But what we've described is there's this freedom that can come by choosing to be in a reality where our kids dictate a lot of our time. We have given up freedom over our schedules because of something, because of this love for these children. Being in a space where we can't just have our own home, where we have this lifelong roommate who maybe is the complete opposite of us in a lot of ways, or has, ways they function. Well, we choose to give up that freedom because we see there is something greater, right? And so that's the hard part, is there is a misunderstanding of what true freedom is. And the more we mature, and particularly those who are Christ followers, the more we mature in understanding who we actually are and who God actually is, it shifts what we think life has to be in order for us to be free. And then suddenly we can get to this place where from the outside, it can look like everything's out of our control, but we have this peace, the peace that defies understanding. And when we bring that into our fatherhood, into our marriage, where we're no longer driven by our emotions or our fear or our desires, but we're driven by this love that is greater than ourselves, we can find some freedom even as our kids still make bad choices, even as our wife still does something that frustrates us. Even when everything falls apart, we're not crushed, persecuted, but not abandoned. And so, yeah, I think we love broad sweeps because it's so much easier. But we live in a reality of nuances, and we are nuanced people. And if we can be humbly honest, do some introspection, and bringing it back again, be intentional, we can find a way to keep stepping forward in this crazy, crazy thing we call life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, let's wrap this thing up. I think this is beautiful. What you guys said on that topic. We went deep. This has been a lot of fun. I do just want to give you guys each 1 minute here to close us out. For our closing hot mic, a 1 minute question on what's on your heart this week. I'm going to give you guys each 60 seconds. What's on your heart this week? What's on your heart today? 60 seconds before we wrap up. We're going to go around one more time. What's one thing on your heart right now? Could be advice, encouragement, or just something you want to leave the listeners with. And I do want to shout out Robert from Texas in the comments of the live stream. He said, totally enjoying your podcast from Texas. Thank you so much.
Shout
I love
out.
when you guys engage with us in the within the chat and stuff. It really makes me happy as a host. We love seeing that. We all do social media, so when you guys engage with us, it means the absolute world to us. So I'll give you guys 10 seconds to think about what's on your heart this week. Actually, I'll give you guys a minute and 10 seconds because I'm going to go first because I'm the host and I can.
So we gotta listen.
Yeah, so you guys get to listen for a minute. So what's on my heart this week is a couple things. So I'm going to time myself so I don't go over here. Hold on. Because I will go over. Yeah, so I was at my daughter's school this morning, and it was her first day of school, and I was just walking around, and I was just looking around, observing, seeing all these dads, and I saw so many dads just wiping their eyes as their kids walked into school, wiping their faces, kind of doing one of these. A couple that were trying to hide it like this and like scratch their face, and I just thought, wow, this is what fatherhood's about, right? Like we have these moments, we get them off to school, and we're just so grateful, and we're just so thankful, and we're just so proud of them, right? It's just this overwhelming sense of pride, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I love it so much. I love seeing the involvement. I love seeing the encouragement of dads and everyone. And I do another thing just on my heart here in my last 15 seconds. Um, I do just want to put out a special thoughts and prayers, and we didn't get into it. Maybe next time we'll get into it. Just for those that were at school today, the first week of school that were impacted in Minneapolis today, by the school shooting at that Catholic school. It's sad. It's discouraging. Like our babies just went back to school this week. First day of school for some of these kids, second, third day, and it's already happening. It's the country we live in. It's the reality of the times. And again, it comes back to 3 P's: prepare, prevent, and then be proactive with them. So that's my minute and a half. So I'm gonna shoot it to Eric. I'll let you go. Let's go, Eric, Chris, Mike, Paul, Casey.
Do what's on my to-do list. So often I set a to-do list so that way I'm structured throughout my day or my days of the week, and then I'll do one thing and then I realize, oh, I don't, this is on my to-do list. I really don't feel like doing this. And so I try to find something else that is important to me but is not on the to-do list. So for this week, it's being disciplined and sticking to what's on my to-do list, because I know at the end of the week I'll feel a lot more accomplished about it.
Love it. And that was only 30 seconds. Good job. Chris, shoot. Minute starts now.
I don't necessarily have anything in particular. I've just been working on stuff as far as like helping fathers from different programs and stuff on my website. So just been focusing on that and just been working on it and praying about it and just working on different things and just looking at things from a different angle, from different layers. So that's what's on my heart.
I love it. I love it. Mike, the mic is yours.
I guess I would say at this moment I'm feeling some gratitude. Just I'm someone who I never had social media. Facebook came out when I was in college, and I never had it. Never had any social media until I created an Instagram account a couple years ago when I went private practice. It was something I just needed to do, and I've at every turn been so rewarded for that decision and surprised continuously that I've gotten just what I thought was the opposite and why I avoided it, which is genuine connection. I've connected and met with people that I never would have had the opportunity to before. And tonight's a perfect example. So I'm really grateful for that.
Love it. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to encourage anybody who's listening, who's thinking, man, I mean, thanks for the advice. That sounds great, but I've been trying. And it's just too much, and I'm at the end of myself. Like, we live in a culture where the idea is if you just know what to do, if you just figure it out, if you just work hard, then you'll make it. That's what's driven into us. And when we hit those moments where it's like, I've got nothing left, well, there must be something wrong with me, something wrong with God. I don't know, but I don't know how to move forward. The past couple years, and definitely the past couple months, I have been to the end of myself. Like, just there's been things going on that I had no more strength, desire. I didn't know what to do. And yet, I've been able to see the faithfulness of God. The moments when I shouldn't have been able to keep on going, the next day I'm like, oh, how did I get through that? And so that's what I want to encourage people is we are limited as human beings, even the best of us, and God is limitless. And inviting him into your situations, learning how to trust him can open up, especially through the Spirit, things that are immeasurably more than you could ask or imagine. So I want to encourage the person who feels hopeless because it is not the end.
Amen. And then Casey, bring us home.
Thanks for the chance to be here, Jay, and it was nice to meet everybody. I really appreciated everyone's candidness and conversation. I wanted to say fatherhood is hard. And I think that we can oftentimes in our social media experience try to advertise the best moments and make it seem like it's more romanticized than possibly potentially it should be. But know that you're getting a window and a picture into what the best moments are like, and those are valuable and worth sharing. We lost our fourth child before we actually our fifth is our youngest now, and God has redeemed that in every step of the way. But we had the worst possible outcome happen to us when you're trying to have kids, and ultimately the journey and the way that God has fulfilled our hearts through our communities and through us having our youngest now daughter. Um, could not have been more redemptive and more beautiful and worth every bit of the effort that we have put into it and so much more. And then not only will I have legacy building opportunities with her, but I'll get to see my son again someday, my second son, who we lost. And that is the ultimate and best thing that I'll have waiting for me apart from Christ himself at the end of this road. So don't don't go into it thinking that it's going to be easy, but I can tell you from having had the one of the worst things happen in our family, it has still been worth the fight.
Amen. Well, that's the table, boys. First ever Youngdad Roundtable, complete. Thank you guys for pulling up. Thanks for keeping it real. To our listeners, make sure you're subscribed. Follow us on YouTube. Follow this podcast at Young Dad Pod on YouTube. You can follow Chris at Kingdom Fathers World on Instagram. Eric at Dope Individuals Pod. Mike at Kiervine. Paul at Where Did You See God? Casey at rumble.right.dad. And of course, myself at Young Dad Pod, where you're listening to this. If you're a dad listening to this and you want a seat at this table one day, hit me up. We'd love to have everyone and anyone at this table. There's room for everybody. And until next time, cheers and keep showing up.
Thanks, Jay.
Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You
everybody.
guys.
And that's it.